Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work. Welcome to KIMEcast. I'm Tony Mickler here with my crew, Russ Dunning, Evan Hauger, Aaron Crouch. We want to take a few questions today that we've received from our social media channels and such. We're going to tackle a few questions here and really kind of maybe describe what's created us and maybe our expertise or our drive and our passion for the profession, which I think is great and always good to reflect upon. So the question is really, how does your athletic background in a specific sport influence your treatment approach for athletes or for the general population? So I think this will be fun for us to dive into. I know that we've all got a really good ones, and I think there's no surprise that people that are really passionate what they do have a good story of why they're into it. So, but before we do that, Evan's gonna break the ice here with the beer of the night.
All right, beer of the episode. This one is called The Therapist.
So fitting.
Adequately named.
Really.
This is an IPA from Dust Bowl, which is in Turlock. Sort of close.
Nice.
This is 10.4% though.
What?
So this is practically hard alcohol. Prepare yourself.
Just going to elaborate
Depends on your
more
age.
on our stories.
Yeah, right.
It's okay.
Hard alcohol is debatable depending on your age. I think as you get older, it needs to be. I've learned it's
Like
Get
90
stronger.
proof or something?
yeah,
You just you're a Scotch only guy.
it's
Scotch.
moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Like a small drink with an ice cube and
Oh yeah, that's good
Yeah.
stuff.
no mixers.
Meh.
I went to a birthday party the other day. It was a 40-year-old birthday party. No, I'm sorry, they were 50-year-old birthday party, which makes you feel even older. But it was one of the craziest parties I've ever been to. But there were no mixers present. It was just bottles on the table, and you just poured it in small
Straight.
glasses and just straight.
Straight.
There's no need for no mixers whatsoever.
Just
Just whiskey? Is that the?
There's a variety of options: vodka, whiskey.
That kind of speaks to the
Name
moment
it.
in life, I'd imagine. I'm not quite there yet, but like,
Yeah.
remove the fluff.
I appreciate you
Get to
saying
the
that.
point. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Oh, he knows.
Get to the point, you know?
That is exactly it. So let's do that. So, athletic backgrounds, or kind of what got you where you're at. I'm going to ask Russ to kick this off because he's one of my favorite ones ever to let him where he's at, and I think it's just a good story, and it's super relatable.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have a story. I do open up to the story on. Oftentimes, when I have patients that have an injury that derails their life, I tell them the story, and usually I get to know them for upwards of like 1 to 2 years, like a motor vehicle accident or an ACL, something where there's going to be some longevity to it. So I've told the story many times in our clinics, and so I was a pretty good athlete as a kid. My parents had me in like 3 sports at a time, so I'd go from martial arts to baseball, then to soccer, and it was really a great life, like being involved in so many sports. And so I was out there on the basketball court. This was when I was 11. I was always like really ballistic and really fast, not the best shot. So when it came to the basketball court, I just loved like driving deep and just going for. I could never dunk, clearly not at 11, but I would try and get up as high as I can. So I really don't have much memory of it, unfortunately, but I was told that I did make the layup. So, I was sprinting down, and apparently I made the layup. I'm thinking in my head, that guy never passed it to me. But the next thing I know, I found myself on the floor, and I basically sprinted straight first into a steel pole. And that's a big ouch. So what happens, in case you're curious...
Live, by the way.
It's pretty gnarly. The steel poles will move too much. It's so I lost quite a bit of memory from it. And what happens? It shook my eyeball so hard that I instantly became blind in my left eye. And it's pretty amazing how the eyeball can shake and your retina rips. So I lost my focal vision, and I just I told you I was a pretty decent athlete. I batted third in the lineup, which anyone who plays baseball knows that you can at least hit the ball consistently if you're batting third. That next season, baseball, I literally struck out every single time. I went from being an okay shot, with basketball, couldn't make the ball, airballed every single ball. In soccer, I'd go for a header, completely missed the header. So the kicker with it is they didn't figure out I was blind for like 3 years because, like every 11-year-old, you cheat. And so when it came down to the eye test, I'm like, well, I can't see shit. So I'm just going to memorize and then repeat. And so I masked this thinking it's okay. But I became blind instantly, sucked at every sport that demanded depth perception. And so anyways, it kind of rocked my world to basically suck at every sport quite instantly. So what I did instinctually, because as a youth we all kind of want to do what we're good at. So I was pretty good at martial arts, and oddly enough, you really don't need much depth perception in martial arts because you're so close that you can kind of read the distance between you and me with one eye, basically. So I got really good at martial arts, and while my friends were doing 2 or 3 sports, I stopped playing sports because I just hated striking out every single time. So instead, I hit the weight room. I trained with my martial arts instructor in kind of off hours on performance. We would kind of combine ballistics, plyometrics, jump rope, and weightlifting. And this was at a pretty young age. And then I became a third-degree black belt over the course of about like 10, 12 years of doing it as a youth. So I kind of really dove deep with my athleticism and looked at my own performance outside of any ball or hand-eye coordination. And what that did is it got me pretty strong. It got me really flexible. It got me pretty quick. Still suck at every sport, but I became a really good mover. And I frankly became obsessed with performance. I was understanding heart rate and conditioning and strength metrics at like 13. My mom just kind of pulled this little certificate out of the attic not that long ago when they moved, and believe it or not, in 7th grade, so I was 13, 14 at the time, and I knew that I was blind at that time. I had quit most sports, but I had such a love for performance at its root that I had an opportunity, because I was pretty good at school. I had an opportunity to do summer school at the college, so I got to go to Sacramento State University as like a 7th, 8th grader during the summer school and study sports medicine, because I figured I wanted to learn sports performance. I wanted to learn what goes wrong and how the body heals without even knowing there's careers in this. I just saw that I could take that course. So I took a summer school course, and I became just, frankly, quite obsessed with performance and regen and healing and movement and flexibility. I loved kicking people in the head. So I was just like that, Jean-Claude Van Damme, of opening up your legs in the spreader and just cranking away, trying to open up my groin. I would stay there for 30 minutes straight. I tried to break my body so that it could do something better. And that's what I kind of fell in love with as a kid, because I didn't have the luxury of hitting bombs or shooting threes. So it did kind of remind me. I recently read a good book called David and Goliath, and it was by Max Gladwell, right? Not Malcolm Gladwell. And a great book of how people can turn a really intense negative in their life to a profound positive. And you might not even achieve such a positive without that darkness. And I'm not sure if I'd be here today if I was two-eyed and could, hit a jump shot. I wouldn't be the person I am. So I say this story to a lot of youth after a difficult injury, because their identity is shook. And for me, my identity was rocked as well, like just instantly sucking. And then, oh, by the way, I remember, like, it was at the time I was watching Apollo 13, the movie. And I told my parents, like, I want to go to the moon. And my mom's like, you kind of need 2 eyes to do that. I'm like, that's okay. I want to go in the military. I'm like, you kind of need 2 eyes to do that. And like, well, yeah, apparently you need 2 eyes to do a lot of like really cool things in this world, just to let you know, between firefighting and law enforcement and military and astronauts. Anyways, the list goes on. But I found my niche, and that's influenced me a lot today, of being able to help understand we get beat down in this life, and that could be a blessing in disguise, and our ability to come out of that suffering can be a great thing. And that's definitely influenced my life.
Turning a negative into a positive, I think that it rings true for myself, for answering the question for all of us. I didn't lose sight of an eye, but I lost sight of an identity, so to speak. So in my athletic career, played multiple sports growing up, and eventually played at the collegiate level for baseball. And I experienced a lot of different injuries as I started to get 18, 19, 20 years old, to the point of, in my early collegiate baseball career, my sophomore year, injured myself in the weight room. It was more like a tweak or something like that, kind of racking weight and like a clean or something. I don't exactly remember what I was doing, but it was like, one of those like, ooh, feel something. Disregard, young and dumb, whatever. And so we had hitting in the cages later that day, just because it was raining and whatnot. And we were hitting off of some nasty curveballs off the machine, and I swung through several of them. And that violent end range rotation really started to stir something up in my spine, my low back. And it just, it's January, it's prepping toward February, which would be the season. You're aiming to get into to the travel roster to go to our first weekend series, and we're there, and it's the first day. It's Friday night. We're hitting BP. And it's like third round. I take a swing, and I'm just like fall to my knees, and just the low back is just on fire, absolutely on fire, and just it's experiencing an injury like anyone experiences it. You kind of like go through the process. ATC looks at you. You're kind of shut down, obviously, for the day, and it didn't feel right throughout the rest of the weekend. Whatever. The problem that I had in my experience was that I wasn't given a direct plan. I wasn't given a direct, hey, this is what's going on. This is mechanism of injury. This is what your symptoms present. This is what we've seen before. This is what we're going to do. Here's the plan. Do you want to do this? It was more so, yeah, hey, check in with the training room, see what they say. I'm like, okay, I'm 19 years old at that time, barely getting in the thought process of PT school eventually, but most of my focus was on baseball. And so I go to the training room, see the team doc, and he's like, oh yeah, here, have a bunch of Celebrex. Just a ton of Celebrex, just high content anti-inflammatory. I'm like, what? With no reason. If they would have given me an explanation like, you need to attack this thing with NSAIDs for the next 3 to 4 days, take out inflammation, then we can actually get you back to moving into the cages, everything else, then there would have been a little incentive behind it. But I didn't understand what was going on, probably not enough questions, and I was like, I'm not taking a bunch of those. I might take a few of them, back still hurts, can't swing. Oddly enough, I throw right-handed, I hit left-handed so I can throw, and so I was able to just kind of stay relatively active in that standpoint. But dragged along for multiple weeks, and then ended up being a couple months of not having a plan, having to outsource my rehab to somewhere else, and eventually finding a place that would help me. And I think time really kind of helped in general there. Like 3 months down the road, it started to heal. I just needed a little bit of a reset, and I was back at it. Then I could swing again, and then it was close to the end of the season, and then so on and so forth. Just kind of like got out of baseball. And so that process for me drives my relationship with every single client. Every single client. Probably more so with the athlete. Because what I experience is what I would hope no one would ever experience in their rehab adventure, their rehab journey, is to be taken away from something that they truly love, not have an answer on how to get back, and then are stopped from doing what they want to do just because they didn't have the right resources. When there's resources around you to get the job done. And so when I talk to young athletes and they come in with an injury, I absolutely promise to them every single time that I will give you every single bit of my knowledge and my effort and my energy to get you back to what you want to do. Because in this day and age, with the amount of resources we have and the science that we have behind the things that we do, there is nothing that should stop your athletic career unless it's just sheer potential. Your own genetic potential will stop you. Outside of that, you have resources to use in the rehab world, the strength and conditioning world, the mindset, and the nutritional world. And I think taking that with every single experience I have with clients really it gets me connected at a deeper level, because it makes me care more that I don't want them to lose their identity. I don't want them to lose their ability to play their sport, to interact with their family, to work at the job that they need to work at, do the things they love to do. So turning a negative at the time really drove me to deciding to go into the profession and do it way better than anything I experienced.
You guys both said something that I think I and Tony probably identifies with this too, is that identity piece is you spend X amount of time for you, Russell, you were 13 years old and you were in college. For me, it was closer to your age, but I think mine had been kind of dwindling until then. But you identify yourself as an athlete of whatever it is. I played baseball like Aaron. So my only thought process my whole life was, this is the next step. What's the next step in baseball? What's the next step in baseball? And when that does come to an end, for whatever reason it is, there's this, it's more than just the physical pain of the injury and the whatever went wrong from that. It's like there's this mental component. You put all of this mental energy, physical energy, and passion into this project of turning yourself into what you would think would be the best player or athlete you could be, and it's completely taken away. And so now you're in this spot where you have all of this energy and passion, but you have nowhere to direct it. So my story is a lot similar to Aaron, so I won't say the whole thing here, but I had many injuries. So I had a similar vertebrae fracture in my back when I was in high school. Dislocated my shoulder 3 times, right shoulder 3 times, had a knee surgery, ACL, MCL, and meniscus all at the same time. That was a stupid one.
So been through it, man.
Yeah, so I had all of this stuff, right? And so as each of these happened, I would kind of see one little bit go away, and so there was this like uncomfortable truth that I hadn't quite like faced yet, that this probably wasn't the way, this wasn't the route. And I didn't really have a backup plan. So my first 2 years of college, I didn't take any science classes. I thought I didn't like science. I took the easiest classes I could possibly take just to play the sport and have more time for the sport. And then when that all came to a crashing halt, I was like, shit, I need to figure out what the next step is. And when I reflected on my injuries and the rehabs that I went through, I saw some therapists and some people, training staff and people that helped me a ton. And I saw some that really, really did not, and in fact led me some really terrible directions. And that kind of like sparked a new passion in me. Like, I don't want anybody else to go through that process, be led the wrong route. I want everybody to have answers. I found information on Google that I felt like my trainer should have had at the time, just like absurd stuff. And then I remember with one of my shoulder surgeries, I was interning with you guys, and Russ like laid out this incredibly detailed plan that the PT at Kaiser had no idea what I was talking about. And I was an undergrad student at that point. So there was this huge disconnect. It kind of sparked a passion for me to go down this route and do it better than other people have done. Kind of like Aaron said, not let anybody get stuck without the right help.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I think there's we have that injury story. I have the same one. I had 2 things happen to me in high school. One of them was that I was injured playing basketball. So basketball is my sport. If you couldn't tell by my frame,
you're enormous, by the way.
Yeah, all of 5'10". At that time probably 145. But if you couldn't tell, that was my that was my passion nonetheless. So I'm playing that. Oddly enough, I was going for a rebound, which I usually prided myself on avoiding the lane at all costs. But in this particular situation, looking back at it, I did go to the lane and then rolled the ankle badly my senior year. So I was super frustrated by that and out for quite a while. So 2 things occurred to me. One is that the injury happened, and then I went through the same story as these guys have told that that Evan told there, at least. That we went through some rehab, and I was like, gosh, this could be so much better. I feel like it's not as good. My friend got hurt at the same time. He went to a different therapist, and it was much better. So it's just like, man, there's got to be a better way. So that's my driving force. The other thing I recognized in that time when I was hurt was that basketball is probably not my future at 5'10", 145 at the time. I grew to 165 in college, so that was a huge advantage. But it was just, it became very apparent to me. But what I was great at was science and math and the anatomy and the body. Just like, it was so interesting. I just think it's the most incredible machine. I still do to today, is how it works and how resilient it can be and how it heals and all of these factors, which is really a passion for me. So nonetheless, after high school basketball, I went to the University of Arizona, and I was fortunate enough to join Arizona basketball with Lute Olson, and I came on as a practice player manager type role. And one of the great things about Lute is he used us as managers as really in practice and had a lot of interaction. And so I did everything from individual workouts to practicing, to travel, to video breakouts and stuff. But one thing that I think that influenced me the most from high school to college was in high school, like, we sucked. Like, our team was terrible. Now, granted, we played in the Bay Area and it was tough. Like, we had, we played against Gary Payton's cousin Brandon. We played against John Farnham who would go to UCLA, Eddie House, who went to ASU. We had some studs that we were going up against, so it was tough games, but we were pretty bad. And then going to Arizona was like, they had just won the national title, and for the next 5 years, we were a top 5 team in the country and won the Pac-10 3 times, went back to the national title game in 2001. So it was really a tremendous amount of success and amount of winning. And that was a big thing that shifted for me. It was like really learning how to win and like how to compete at a high level. And I think that that's influenced me to this day. The other thing that was amazing with that is the level of athletes that I was able to be around. I started to look at it, like I said, I realized my career was relatively over as far as my future of playing ball in high school. But seeing and being around these guys that were the top guys, I think I had 13 or 14 teammates that went to the league, and many of them had 15, 18-year careers. I mean, so many of them still in the league. So it's just been tremendous to see this talent. and to see like how gifted they were, and a few variables. So I'll just tell you one story that I think holds true from like what we do every day and how it impacts me. And I didn't realize what I was seeing at the time, but looking back now, it's really, really clear. So we went to we were playing in the Coaches versus Cancer Classic, which is in the Garden, Madison Square Garden, which is the mecca of college basketball. So if you have any interest in college basketball, you know what that means. That's the creme de la creme. That's it. It's ESPN. You know, Dick Vitale's on the bus with you. He's in the locker room with you. I mean, it's like the real deal. So, you know, we're there and we're ranked, I can't remember, we were like 5th or 6th in the country, and we're playing against Maryland. And then I think Florida was in that tournament. So we had like 3 top 5 or 6 teams in the tournament. So nonetheless, it was a big deal, really, really big for us. So, you know, I'm hyped going into the bus and going to the Garden, and you're in New York and the whole thing, right? I mean, if you're not hyped, like something's wrong with you, right? And so we're on the bus heading to the Garden for game time, and, you know, it's about an hour and a half before the game, and I'm kind of looking around on the bus, and, like, most of the dudes who are our best players, like guys that played in the league, are literally sleeping. And they're, like, had the headphones on, just out. Headphones weren't cool at this time. Okay, this was before this was before Beats.
Cords.
Yeah,
like
they were very
Walkman,
corded. There was
right?
a Discman, as a matter of
Very
fact. After the Walkman,
playlist of
no.
songs.
This was a Discman situation.
Oh wow! Sorry.
Before the MP3 period, the Apple iTunes was not available at this time. So I know you have no idea what I'm talking about, but nonetheless, the bus was yellow. I mean, it was actually a very nice charter situation, but nonetheless, so we're there, and these dudes are all like sleeping on the bus, and I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? Like, this is it. You know, this is what we play for. You know, but what's always interesting is this happened no matter where we played, at Staples or at the United Center in Chicago. We played in Key Arena in Seattle. You know, we've been all over the country playing unbelievable games and throughout the NCAA tournament and the whole deal. And the point is that it was really interesting to watch the eliteness of the performers, that they could really like control their nervous system and their positioning and say that, hey, I'm chilling on the way of the game, and I'm not, you know, I'm hyped maybe, but I'm going to, you know, contain that energy. But then once you walk into those 4 lines onto the court, it's like, it's on, and you just can't stay with them. And I think that when we look at what's framed for me at this stage in my career as a sports medicine, performance coach, rehab guys, the nervous system and the understanding of how to manipulate the nervous system, and the understanding that you have to have as an elite athlete and as a high-performing person, how to control your nervous system. And that was a tremendous demonstration looking back at it. Like, I was always wondering, like, how are these guys doing this? Like, how are you not hyped right now? But they knew exactly when to push and when to pull back. And I think those are ways that you might see, like the question is, how does sports influence you, what you do today? And I learned so much about the elite athlete and how they function and the amazing things they can do. Of course, the genetic component was obviously pretty staggering as well. But so just interesting stuff, and it's pretty powerful. Like, to think about how different that was.
You know, you should never sell yourself short, by the way.
We're going to talk about his field goal
5'10".
My dad jokes are strong. I'm not gonna lie. He's got a ton there. Damn it. I've been trying to use that for like
My
5
friends at the time were 6'9" to 7'1", so I was definitely on the short side.
What do they call an outlier?
I have another point to make here that is a little bit different than everything we've just talked about. The question was, you know, what do you take away from your sport experience in your career as a clinician now? And I think one thing is, so when I hear Aaron talk to a baseball player, when I talk to a baseball player, when I hear Russ talk to a fighter, when I hear Tony talk to a basketball player, this like kind of like passion comes out, right? And you can speak the language that they speak about their sport. So when I realized that very early on in treating for me, when I realized that I could talk to a baseball player like that, and then I had a lacrosse person walk in next, I was like, okay, shit, I need to figure out how to talk to them like that person, because that gets you this immediate buy-in. And it also gives me just such a much better understanding of how to help them manage their sports season, how to manage the rehab, how to manage the whole process, and then I can have a much more detailed conversation with them. So I think the understanding I have and had of baseball has kind of led me to try to figure all of those little intricacies out about all the sports and people that we see on a daily basis.
Okay.
So
I think that segues into the next question, for sure. For me, personally, but I think for everyone in this group. The next question, for sure.
What's the next question?
I believe it was, if you could pick a body part that you feel like you treat the best.
Your favorite? What's your favorite body part?
It wasn't quite that question yet. We'll get there.
To treat. Favorite body part to treat. Just to be specific.
Yeah, that could be it. quite different.
Not just in general.
Yeah.
Well, that goes to the clinician.
Sometimes they're the same. Okay.
but that goes to the clinician that says, well, like, I'm pretty good at shoulders, but I don't really know what to do with the back.
Yeah.
You know, you look at this part of the body as if it's separate, as if it's like this segment you can strip away. And I think, I'm going to say right now, my favorite thing to treat is the nervous system. I think that's it. And you know, when we're treating the system, I guess you could also say I like treating the blood system as well, because when we think about oxygen, blood, mitochondria, and then sympathetic and parasympathetic, what else is there?
The problem is you can't do anything in isolation. Yeah. The problem is you can't do anything in isolation. Your point is great. Aaron thinks you're right. Your point is good. You can't do anything in isolation. We can't touch somebody's shoulder without going through their nervous system first. There's so many other components. And to your point about the back, like if we have a good understanding of the shoulder but not the T-spine, then I would argue we really don't have a good understanding of the shoulder. So the kinetic chain and the connectedness is.
You might start with like a body part that you like to treat the most because maybe that's the one you're most comfortable with. Like you said, you feel the most. Myself and yourself, we feel the most comfortable talking to a baseball player, but we're leaving a lot out there on the table to not be influenced. Like if you really want to be an influencer in the place that you're at and serve a greater community, you've got to be great at everything.
And the shoulder problem, the shoulder pain might really be a foot problem, right? If it's the baseball player you're talking about, when they get to foot plant on their lead leg, maybe there's an instability piece there, and maybe that force is now being directed somewhere else, and it's shoulder pain, and when they could be absorbing it somewhere else. So it's that's a complicated question, I think.
Yeah, certainly a question that I can't answer. That's for sure. I mean, I think to that point, we made the comparison earlier about, you know, people all the time talk about sports med and PT as like a movement mechanic or a body mechanic, you know, like a car mechanic. And, you know, if you were to ask a NASCAR head mechanic, you know, what's your favorite part on the car to fix? And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, every piece matters, because when we're looking at the vehicle to perform and go as fast as possible for as long as possible, you know, I can't look at one thing, right? You know, and I think the same thing's true with the body, is that we have to look at this thing as a system, and that's what makes it fun. Frankly, that's the fun part, is like, you know, I'm at a point where most body parts in isolation is relatively straightforward. You know, is it a movement dysfunction? Is it like, are they stiff? Is there a lack of mobility? Like, we can get that back through certain techniques. That's relatively simple. And maybe there's some weakness. We could build that back up with some pretty sequential strategic work that we can do. But then how do you really integrate that back into the whole system is really always my question. How do we link it back to the kinetic chain so that it becomes part of the person's natural movement? Because that's what's going to prevent the injury from coming back. And that's what's going to make them take it to their next level of function and have true success in their life, or true health. You know,
I mean, what that speaks to is really to influence that. You're influencing their mind and their mindset, and you know that the top of the nervous system is the brain. And we talk a lot about lifestyle factors that really kind of move the needle from a healing and regenerative standpoint, but also your tolerance in your mind, your tolerance in whether it's your tolerance for pain or an understanding that pain's okay. It's just telling you something's on the mend. Leave it the fuck alone, you know. And I think helping that both that education as well as that coaching mindset and the motivation and that connection, that gets really fun. You know, once we kind of get past the shoulder and really kind of dive into what makes you tick, where are we going with this journey? That's what this spice is all about. And I think that's what drives me. Now, I don't think I'll ever have burnout actually in patient care. I mean, truly, you know, we've been at this for well over a decade. And if I wanted to, and if it was good for the company, I would treat, 16 people a day, every day, just having fun, influencing people. Right?
We all feel
absolutely.
That.
Yes, real. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think comes through here more loud and clear than anything, is that, you have that internal passion to help somebody. I think it was said almost every time, is like, we don't want somebody else to go through that experience that we had that was less than ideal. Let's just say, maybe it could have been better. Right? We all see the opportunity that could have been better. That's what drives us every day at KIME, is like, how can we make it better so that our clients and our customers can have this experience and get back to whatever it is that they love. And this identity piece is massive. We talked about that as well tonight, and I think that's so huge and often can be overlooked when the person comes in on that first day after an ACL or after a shoulder dislocation or with a back injury, and they're hurting, and that's obviously part of it, but they're also hurting emotionally because to make it dramatic, like, think about especially a high school athlete, I think is really, really critical here. And we tend to like, oh, they're young, they'll heal, it's fine. But if you think about a high school athlete, like when I was in high school, like people say, well, you know, who are you? Be like, I'm a basketball player, right? Who are you? I'm a baseball player, or I play football, or I'm a martial artist. You identify who you are by what it is that you do. And then to take that, have that taken from you, usually not by your own choice. Now all of a sudden you can't play for maybe a short period of time, maybe a long period of time. Then the question starts to become like, when your friends ask you like, hey, what do you do? Or who are you? Like, what are you all about? And be like, am I really a football player still? Because I can't run the way that I used to run. I can't cut the way I used to cut, you know?
And it's short-sighted of us to think of this as just an athlete, right? Like, it's probably even more real when you talk about a parent that can no longer pick their kid up because their back hurts, right? That's even more like basic life stuff. It's not just not playing their sport. It's they can't take care of their kid, which, as Aaron can tell you firsthand, there's like physiologic stuff in his body driving him to take care of that kid. Stuff he's not in control of. Right. So, I mean, but yeah, I think it can get even more real. We'd be short-sighted to say it's just athlete, but I think everybody has that driving force. And
what the fuck are we doing? Running versus jogging. Can we just not jog anymore and just run?
Yeah, I'm going to run with it right from here because we talked about this, like even how like maybe your athletic experience impacts your passion and what we were talking about. So I'll tell you right from the get-go, back in basketball in high school, we used to run for some ungodly reason. Our coach thought it was a good idea to run the mile, which then turned into 5 miles and 7 miles, and he loved to real running, I would call it, I guess, which very few of us were good at. But nonetheless, my teammates thought it was really genius if you just went really slow and kind of like jogged, that was somehow more effective. It hurt me. Like I was fucking in pain. Like I'm like I cannot go this slow. This is incredibly uncomfortable. I would rather just run, and so then I would do so, and then I was decent at that, probably better than I was at basketball at the point. But the point is that we saw this like difference of like people were jogging, people were running. I see this in patients all the time. It's like I just want to make it clear that when we look at like movement and we look at like movement mechanics and how we train someone or what kind of pattern we want to emulate, and maybe it's a baseball throw or a basketball shot or it's an MMA move, it's a certain jiu-jitsu move or whatever it might be, or it's sprinting. But jogging's not on the list. Okay, it's not on the list. It's not a list. It's not saying like, hey, I want to go jogging. No, you don't. That's not a sport. That's not a movement that you want to emulate. So we should just take it off. So, and I think it's important for that reason, because if we look at jogging, we see a lot of people doing it. You know, the marathons and the running thing is really big, and the distance runs and stuff are great. But if you look at the sport of running at the elite level, they run fast, very, very fast. We're just talking about, you know, marathoner, they can do it in just over 2 hours. Like the pace of that is insane. So I'm kind of a big fan. If you're running marathons in 3.5 to 4 hours, you're probably still in the mix of running a decent pace, and that's good. If you're over the 4 hour mark, then I would still encourage you to run the race and have some fun with it, but I would rather you see do an interval program where run fast as long and as far as you can, and then walk when you can't run. But to do this like shuffle jog thing is really just tearing down your joints and structures, because now you've gone from a running and sprinting is a very horizontal impact, very low impact activity, which is tremendous for your soft tissues in your body. But if you don't have a cardiovascular system for it, if you don't have the strength for it, you're just doing vertical impact in the ground, jogging all day long, and then you wonder why your knee hurts.
Explain that again, because I bet you that phrase you lost people about the impact. Sprinting is less impact than jogging. Yeah. Do it again.
Well, so when you look at movement, it's all about efficiency. Like, how do I get something from here to there in the most efficient way? So when you're running, you're looking to generate horizontal force vectors. When you're jogging, you're generating vertical force vectors. Stupid. This is stupid shit. Okay, I don't know how to say it any simpler. It doesn't make any damn sense. So stop doing it. Let's walk and generate horizontal force vectors. We can walk very fast. It's fine. Or you can run really fast, and that's also fine. But to jog just really doesn't make a lot of sense. So if you can't handle running fast because your cardiovascular system is not there, or your leg isn't there, you're tired, then walk fast, recover, and then let's sprint again. So I love the interval.
Or you're not addressing the true limiting factor, right?
Certainly,
so if you're choosing to just go through, and I'll support anyone being active by all means,
100%.
But at the end of the day, if you're going to have longevity in whatever you want to do, and you want to do it well, like what I hope most people would want to do is they want to do something really well, is that if you want to get better at running, it's not about logging more miles at a 12-minute pace. It's about understanding your cardiovascular system needs to tolerate a higher heart rate for a longer period of time, and then your muscular system and your tendinous system needs to tolerate a faster recoil to the impact of the ground. Work on those things while you do your interval walk jog situation, and then I promise you probably get a little bit better at running.
Yeah. You know, it struck me like one of the times was the most influential moment was as working with Kim Conley. She's a two-time Olympian in the 5K, which is fast. She runs fast. And we were working on a partnership with Alter G, so we're going to bring Alter G into the clinic. And so I asked Kim, I said, hey, can you come run on the unit and we think about it? Is this something that you think you train on in our facility, et cetera? And she did, and Alter G brought the rehab units. They have two units. They have one that runs Woodway treadmill, runs at like 26 miles an hour, and then they have the one that's on I think it's on a Precore or something that goes like 13 and a half miles an hour. Both would be fine for me, obviously, right? 13 and a half would be no problem. So anyways, I asked Kim to jump on it. She jumps on it for like 45 minutes, and she gets off, and I'm like, what'd you think? Do you like it? She's like, I think obviously there's value in this and in it. She goes, but I couldn't use it. It's not fast enough. Not fast enough. It's 13 and a half miles an hour. Like, how fast do you run? She goes, well, I'd like to run at like 15 miles an hour. I'm like, so would I, but that's kind of a dream, at this point. And she's like, that's what I trained at. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, the speed at which we're moving here, even a distance event, is really, really tremendous. So I think the take-home message here is it's obviously a strong stance on my behalf, because I just don't think it's a biomechanically advantaged position to be in. I do think it's great that you're out moving and that you're burning calories and you're doing those things, but we were talking about the challenges there, which are great. But it also has a lot of impact on your body and has a lot of negative effects that I think are worth a talk. And that's the point here is I'd much rather people run a bit faster and challenge themselves that way, even if it's for 100 yards or for 200 yards or for 800 yards or whatever it is. And then speed walk is a phenomenal tool.
Sure.
And then interval that back and forth, as opposed to getting just jogging really slowly. I think you have to ask yourself why you're doing it. That's always the question, right? Why are we doing what we're doing?
Yeah.
And if it's simply calorie burn, then I think there's some purpose there. But be careful. You're risking some other stuff.
I have two thoughts on that. You dropped the biomechanical analysis, and for those who are listening that have taken biomechanics or understands joint forces, I think the big thing we see with jogging is you're going to get a shin angle that's more forward. And if you look at it at someone, a novice jogger, they will let that foot hang out there, and that means that they're going to slow down with every step. So then we get the shin splints, we get the Achilles issues, we get the knee pain. You get everything that comes with decelerating at every single step. Rather than a run, you're going to see that foot, that shin angle be opposite. It's going to be more angled behind you to propel you forward. And that's what kind of leads to a more favorable stress pattern. That is what we mean by running. So a novice jogger will kind of let that foot linger. It'll let it cast out, and that's where all the negative consequences come in. One of my best friends, Tab Strite, he trains up in trucking, and he trains a lot of the most elite endurance athletes in the world from this standpoint. And he'll train the ultra marathon people. He'll train the people who do the Pacific Rim. These people are a bit insane. They're a bit nutty. They jog, and I will tell you that when they jog, it is a science. It is a precise skill, just like a tennis serve, just like an MMA hook, just like hitting a bomb in baseball. It is a precise skill. It's not something we do really quite naturally. So to be able to jog at a high level so that you can do it for literally 48 hours straight with a little bit of a bathroom break, it's a refined skill. And a lot of people, unfortunately, I think of jogging as I'm going to start getting in shape. I'm going to go for a jog without really being a master jogger or going to a running coach to really perfect your technique. And that's setting aside the motion deficits or the stability deficits that someone might have. That's actually trying to get in shape to begin with, which is going back to your point. This is rarely a good decision to do. If you're thinking about jogging, run, walk, and hike. Don't jog. And if running scares you because you're not sure if you can handle that kind of stress, then get strong and hike and go for a bike ride. There's a lot of other safer ventures. But jogging is really, we're going to find a lot of injuries there.
Yeah, and it's that couch to 5K that's the problem, right? It's tissue that's not prepared to absorb forces, running in a pattern that's absorbing more forces than just about anything else they can do.
I think it'd be interesting to talk to Tab. We should bring him on and have a conversation with that, because I would bet in talking with some of the endurance runners that we work with that they say, I'm just going to go out for an easy run, which we might all correlate to that being a jog. And then if you ask a secondary question like, well, how fast is that for you? And then the answer is, it's about a 6.5, 7 minute mile. Oh, that's the easy run. It's not 9 minute miles or 10 minute miles. That's not in the vocabulary. So I think, again, with the vocabulary, they might use the word jog, but to them, jog is actually a pretty fast run to most of us that may not be in that sport. So just considerations to make. Just consider what you're doing and how you're treating your body and what you're trying to get out of it. I think at the end of the day, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And if it's better movement, if it's longer quality of life, if it's not breaking down joints and tissues, then I would look to avoid jogging. Look at sprinting as a great way to challenge yourself, build your body, build your cardiovascular system, build your strength, build your balance. There's nothing better than sprinting, frankly. And then power walk it, which is a great caloric burn and a great challenge in the meantime. And as you build it up, then you can sprint for longer or run faster for longer, which is essentially what we see in the elite runners.
I think you said the kind of the times right there. And if the listener says, well, Tony, you really haven't said what jogging equals, and it is kind of like that 9, 10, 11 minute mile. Yeah. It's not really like a 6.5 or a 7. There is a very distinct difference between a 7 minute mile and an 8.5 minute mile. The movement changes. You go again from more of a horizontal projection to this kind of vertical, bouncing rabbit. And I, every now and again, I'll think of like a kangaroo trying to go slow. Kangaroos going slow, they can't go slow. It's not really efficient for their tendons and elasticity to do that. A kangaroo has to go at a certain speed for what's called resonancy. And it has to do with the elasticity of the tissue. It's the only thing that makes sense. To go slow is frankly stupid for the kangaroo, so you will never see them do it.
Okay,
never.
That's a great point. So could you name an animal that does jog? I've never seen one.
The elephant. What?
They actually get going pretty fast. It's like a life-saving run.
To their pace.
That's just as fast as they go.
It's the human. I guess it's only the human.
It's exactly my point.
Yeah. It's a psych. It's a psych thing.
You either run and chase something down, or you walk around and conserve energy. To my point earlier about my guys in the bus, you conserve energy, and then you go and you execute. But at no point are you just out jogging around, wasting energy. It doesn't make any damn sense.
Well said.
So at any rate,
run, don't jog.
That's enough of that. But good luck to you out there in your running adventures. I don't know if that helps.
Stay healthy.
If you need us, you know where to find us. So, thanks for listening to KIMEcast.
Not now. I'm just kidding.
This was KIMEcast, and we are the Kime Human Performance Institute. Thank you very much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. Please hop on our social media. It's at KIMEHPI and engage with us there. If you'd like us to feature a topic or answer any questions live on the show, post your comments there. You can also check us out on our website at KIMEperformance.com, and there you can see links to content that we've posted throughout our podcast for more information.